Hi, I'm Charles Gauthier, President and CEO of the Downtown Vancouver Business Improvement Association. The DVBA is so proud to support this daily podcast series that is helping our community navigate through these trying times. As we all settle into what we hope is a temporary new normal, please consider helping support our local businesses. Whether it's by getting takeout from your favorite restaurant or giving a local shop a great review, it all adds up. Thanks, everyone, and stay safe.
I'm Haley Wooden with a short COVID news update ahead of our regular Coping with COVID video interview. The province today launched an economic recovery task force. Its members include cabinet ministers as well as leaders from business, labor, industry, First Nations, and the not-for-profit sector. The goal of the task force will be to advise government on its economic recovery strategies, both in the short term as well as in the longer term. And Prime Minister Justin Trudeau today dodged calls to make public Canada's COVID-19 projections. He says his government is doing what it can and has been quite transparent in making raw data available. And finally, an alternative hospital bed site slated to take place at the Vancouver Convention Centre will be operational by April 8th. This site is intended to take care of non-COVID-19 victims who have been displaced by the outbreak. I'm Haley Wooden. Thanks for watching. Here's our interview. You're watching Coping with COVID-19, our daily video from BIV, where we look at some of the economic and business impacts of the current coronavirus crisis. My guest today, Anita Huberman, CEO and President of the Surrey Board of Trade. Anita, hope you're doing well, and thanks so much for taking the time to come on our show today.
Thanks for having me. Thank you.
So we've seen a number of different programs and benefits and initiatives from both provincial and federal governments. I'm curious to get your thoughts on what you're hearing from members. What do they think about some of these initiatives?
Well, the federal government is enacting changes basically on a daily basis. These are decisions that typically take a year or 2 years in order to invoke legislation, pass it through Parliament. And really, the same is with the provincial government. So, I believe, and I've been hearing on the ground, I hear from businesses daily, is that businesses are frustrated. They need cash. They need to have liquidity. The detail is lacking. Application portals, for the most part, will be open April 6th. But really, people are frustrated, and they're having to close their business April 1st. Many of them didn't have money to make rent, and many of them are anticipating they will not be able to meet their property tax payments as well, compromising municipal and provincial budgets.
Yeah, there's been so much to try and take stock of. And I know governments have mentioned that they're doing their best to try and provide immediate relief. But Anita, how immediate is the relief that we're looking at for businesses?
Well, we heard on April 1st, through a press conference by Finance Minister, that it could take up to 6 weeks upon application for people to receive their cash that they need, whether it's through EI, whether it's through wage subsidy, whether it's through the Canada emergency benefit, or through other mechanisms that the federal government has announced, simply because some of the legislation still has to be passed through the House, or the application portals are not available yet. You also have websites, service delivery that is being compromised or crashing. I also have to say that service personnel by both the federal government, the provincial government, and even at local governments have been absolutely amazing in terms of dealing with questions, responding to questions in these very unprecedented, fast moving times.
Yeah, I have to imagine they're absolutely just inundated with questions and calls and concerns from Canadians across the country. So I kudos to all of those who are on the front lines in that sense. I'm curious, Anita, what can maybe be done or what is being done to grant businesses relief while they're waiting, say, for the next 6 weeks to get more significant support from government?
Well, next week, at least the 5 banks, I'm not sure about the credit unions, they're going to start the application processes related to the $40,000 loan that businesses can access. So we know in the first year, no interest. $10,000 of that can be forgived in the second year. So people can start accessing that cash. They can start applying for EI and then wait until the Canada Emergency Benefit Program is up and running until they get that cash, which is 5 to 6 weeks away. So there are different mechanisms. There have been tax deferrals by the provincial government. We heard on April 1st, BC Hydro types of deferments. We heard other pieces related to deferment. So I really encourage any business that's listening to the BIV podcast to take a look at the Canadian government website, the provincial government website. At the Surrey Board of Trade, we also have our own emergency portal as well at businessinsurrey.com, because you need to have reliable information. And certainly BIV provides that as well. But just don't listen to social media. Make sure you're getting that reliable information. Talk to your bank manager. Look at ways to liquidate. Look at ways to increase cash flow, whether you're an individual or a business.
Reliable and also up to date, to your point about how this is changing daily or even hourly in some cases. So if you're looking at a resource that was put up even a couple of days ago, it might not even be up to date. So very important to make sure that you're really getting the latest source of information as well.
True. And also on that note, like all of the links for the federal government, and we're on these daily federal government calls with Minister of Small Business, Minister of Innovation. They may look like the same links, but they are updated daily, and same with the provincial government.
What can you give us by way of insight into maybe how governments at the provincial and federal levels are thinking about how they support businesses? So behind the scenes, what kinds of things are they considering that might be helpful for businesses to understand who are just looking at the outcome? What can you tell us about the process?
Well, the federal government, they participate on these nationwide calls at 8 a.m. every morning. And as I mentioned, the Minister of Small Business, their civil service, the Minister of Innovation, their civil service, and they want emails on specific examples that are happening on the ground to really meet those fill in the gap measures that are affecting different industries, service organizations, or even individuals, our workforce, for example. And so I know they're actively working. I mean, they're working basically 24-hour days. Same with the provincial government. The Surrey Board of Trade, we're very pleased to serve the provincial government in its new BC Economic Recovery Task Force, not only on what's happening during COVID-19, but also post-economic recovery for COVID-19. So those measures are already being taken a look at. They're sector specific, they're business specific, they're service specific, they're newcomer specific, but also taking a look at our communities and how we live, our municipalities, and not only in our major urban centers, but all over British Columbia. So a lot of work is being done in the background, and usually, we're always critical of government, but in this instance, they've really come to the table. Not everything is perfect because things are just changing so quickly, as you said.
Exactly, a very dynamic, complex, and really unprecedented situation. I'm curious if there are any measures or policies that the Surrey Board of Trade would like to see various levels of government implement that have not yet been addressed.
Well, most recently, we sent a media release and a policy document to both the provincial and federal government with a focus on relaxing or deferring property taxation, as well as more supports for landlords and renters. Simply, we saw on April 1st a lot of businesses in Surrey, their landlords saying not passing on those savings that the provincial government helped them with, saying if you can't pay your rent, you're out. And really, where is the humanity in that during COVID-19? So more measures need to be put in place, and that means a lot of people, number one, will not be able to pay their property taxes. There needs to be a deferment in that regard. There needs to be more support for landlords, both small and large, and of course, protection for tenants as well, so that when things go back to our new normal, people can resume their small business in their existing business location and start all over. There needs to be an understanding between tenant and landlord in terms of what is happening. So we call for some tax measures. We called for a series of relaxations and deferments. But really, one of the other pieces that we're saying to the federal government in order to increase cash flow or liquidity is to make sure that the banks and the credit unions are working with businesses, that interest rates are reduced. Those BDC and EDC loans, interest rates are reduced. And to make sure those credit card interest rates are not skyrocketing.
Well said. I know so much of the attention has been placed on what the federal and provincial governments are doing. What kind of economic leadership are you seeing, say, from the city of Surrey, or would you like to see at the municipal level?
Well, we're very pleased, and we advocated for this as well to have weekly calls with the City of Surrey's pandemic committee. I mean, the city of Surrey, it was very unexpected, the whole COVID-19 situation. And certainly communication from their economic development office right from the outset with different business organizations could have been way better. A lot of our business organizations in the city, whether they're BIAs or boards of trades, we've been doing a lot of work, even from February 14th. When we launched our business continuity planning guides, when we heard what was happening in Wuhan, China, and the implications to North America and how businesses need to prepare. So, local governments, really, all throughout British Columbia, need to make sure that they're communicating with their stakeholders in an ongoing daily way, not hiding information, seeing how they can help each other and sharing information. And there's a lot of good work already being done by business organizations and municipalities can take advantage of that as well. And also in order for their work to continue too.
hmm And you mentioned earlier in kind of the pan-provincial way, a lot of that work will continue with this new economic recovery task force announced this week by the provincial government. What is important to you to communicate to government at this time on behalf of business?
Well, the whole purpose of this economic recovery task force, which includes the BC Chamber of Commerce, the Business Council of BC, Success, and others, um, and also First Nations throughout the province, is to make sure that the Premier and the Finance Minister and Civil Service know what is happening on the ground. What are the fill and gap measures that need to be invoked? What red tape measures in the interim need to be implemented? And also, they're looking to us for post pandemic economic recovery ideas, whether it's from a workforce, human capital perspective, whether it's sector specific, whether it's in terms of municipal types of efforts. So we had our first call today on April 2nd, and they're weekly calls every Thursday morning. And really, a lot of the work is going to be done in between meetings. And we don't know how long this virus is going to last. We don't know what impacts it's going to have on BC budget and BC budget infrastructure deliverables to create jobs. But what we do know is we're in this together.
Absolutely. Anita, a pleasure having you on the show for the first time virtually like this, but of course, a regular guest on our normal podcast. Glad to hear you're doing well. Thanks so much for taking the time to come on.
Thank you.
That's Anita Huberman, President and CEO of the Surrey Board of Trade. Thanks so much for watching Coping with COVID. We'll be back tomorrow with a new video.